What if the life you've been working so hard to create could shift in the next 24 hours, not through more effort, more strategy, or more hustle, but through something you've been overlooking this entire time? I know that might sound too good to be true, especially if you've been grinding for months or even years with little to show for it. But stay with me here, because what you're about to discover has nothing to do with manifestation tricks or positive thinking cliches. This is about something far more tangible, far more immediate, and frankly far more powerful than anything you've probably tried before. Have you ever noticed how some people seem to glide through life? They don't appear to be working harder than you. They're not necessarily smarter, more talented, or better connected. Yet somehow, opportunities find them. The right job appears at exactly the right moment. Money flows with a kind of ease that feels almost unfair. Relationships, success, breakthroughs, they all seem to materialize as if by magic. Meanwhile, you're over here planning every move, optimizing every strategy, staying up late trying to figure out what you're missing. And despite all that effort, despite doing everything right, you keep hitting the same invisible walls. Here's what's fascinating, and this is where everything changes. It's not about working harder or having better luck. There's an actual frequency, a vibrational state that these people are operating from, whether they know it, consciously or not. And when you're tuned into this frequency, reality doesn't just respond to you, it responds within hours, not weeks, not months. Within a single day's cycle, you'll start seeing synchronicities stack up, doors opening that were previously locked, and circumstances aligning in ways that feel almost too perfect to be coincidence. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. Now, you might be thinking, if this frequency exists, why isn't everyone using it? And that's exactly the right question to ask. Because the truth is, most people are broadcasting the wrong signal without even realizing it. They think they're sending out messages of abundance, readiness, and confidence, but underneath, their unconscious mind is transmitting something completely different: fear, doubt, unworthiness, scarcity. And here's the critical part most people miss. Reality doesn't respond to what you consciously want. It responds to the frequency you're actually broadcasting from the deepest parts of your unconscious mind. This is why two people can want the exact same thing, follow the same steps, put in similar effort, and get completely different results. One person attracts it effortlessly, while the other keeps struggling. The difference isn't talent, timing, or luck. The difference is frequency. And once you understand how to align your frequency with what you desire, everything shifts. What you're about to learn isn't theory. It's the actual mechanism behind why reality bends towards some people and away from others. So the real question becomes, how do you shift your frequency in a way that actually sticks? Because here's where most people get trapped. They're hustling harder than anyone around them. They're waking up at 5 in the morning, following every productivity hack, executing every strategy with military precision. They're doing everything the success gurus told them to do. And yet, despite all that effort, despite the sleepless nights and the sacrifices, their dreams keep slipping through their fingers like water. It's exhausting. It's demoralizing. And worst of all, it makes no logical sense. You look around and see people who seem to be doing less than you, yet somehow they're getting more. They're not working as hard, not stressing as much, not forcing outcomes with sheer willpower, but they're winning. And that creates this nagging question in the back of your mind: what am I missing? What do they have that I don't? And here's where the real transformation begins, because the answer isn't what you think. It's not about their connections, their background, or some secret knowledge they have access to. It's not even about their level of discipline or how many hours they put in. The hidden truth is that there's an invisible factor at play, something operating beneath the surface of every success story and every frustrating failure. This factor determines outcomes far more powerfully than conscious action alone ever could. Most people never discover this because they're too busy doing. They're so focused on the external actions, the networking, the planning, the executing, that they completely miss what's happening on the inside. They miss the frequency they're broadcasting while they're taking all those actions. And this is the critical piece. You can have the perfect strategy, the perfect plan, the perfect execution, but if your frequency is misaligned, if your unconscious mind is broadcasting doubt, fear, or unworthiness while you're consciously trying to succeed, reality will reflect that internal contradiction back to you every single time. It's not personal, it's not punishment, it's just how the system works. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time. I'm creating content on consciousness and real transformation principles, not fluff, but what actually works. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what's next. The difference between those who attract opportunities effortlessly and those who struggle despite their best efforts isn't luck. It's not privilege or cosmic favoritism. It's not about being in the right place at the right time. The truth is far more interesting and far more empowering than any of those explanations, because it means you have more control than you ever realized. When you understand how your internal frequency shapes your external reality, when you grasp that every thought, every word, every unconscious belief is actively creating the circumstances you're experiencing right now, everything changes. Suddenly, you're not at the mercy of external conditions anymore. You're not hoping and wishing and waiting for your turn. You're the one setting the frequency, and reality has no choice but to match it. Now, I want to go even deeper into this, because understanding the mechanics behind frequency alignment is what separates people who have momentary breakthroughs from people who create lasting transformation. Think about those rare moments in your life when everything just clicked. You weren't forcing anything. You weren't trying so hard. There was this lightness, this sense of flow, and suddenly opportunities appeared out of nowhere. The right person called at the right time. The solution you'd been searching for just showed up. Doors opened that you didn't even know existed. That wasn't random. That wasn't luck. That was you accidentally stumbling into the right frequency, into that vibrational state where your conscious desires and your unconscious programming were finally aligned. And in that alignment, reality responded immediately. The problem is that most people don't know what they did to get there, so they can't recreate it. They can't sustain it, and before long they're back to the old patterns, the old struggles, wondering what happened to that magic. Write in the comments, "I see the pattern now," if this is starting to click for you. What makes this even more fascinating is that there's a specific vibrational frequency you can tune into, a psychological state of being, where the entire dynamic shifts. Instead of chasing opportunities, instead of hunting down every lead and door-knocking your way through life, you become the one being pursued. You stop being the hunter and become the hunted. Now, that might sound abstract, but let me explain what this actually looks like in practice, because once you experience it, you'll never question whether this is real or not. When you're operating at this frequency, something remarkable happens. Opportunities start seeking you out. Not because you're posting more on social media or networking harder, but because your internal state is broadcasting a signal that reality recognizes and responds to. It's like tuning a radio to the exact station where your favorite music is playing. Suddenly, everything becomes crystal clear. The static disappears. The noise fades away. And what comes through is exactly what you've been looking for. This isn't about wishful thinking or manifesting fantasies. This is about aligning yourself with a state of being that naturally attracts what you desire without force, without manipulation, without exhausting yourself in the process. The right people show up at exactly the right moment. Not a week too early when you're not ready, not a month too late when the opportunity has passed, but precisely when everything aligns. Resources that seemed impossible to access suddenly become available. Money flows in from unexpected sources. Solutions to problems you've been wrestling with for months appear out of nowhere, fully formed, as if someone handed them to you on a silver platter. Doors don't just open. They swing wide before your hand even reaches the handle. This is the hallmark of frequency alignment, and it's something anyone can access once they understand the mechanics behind it. But here's what trips most people up. They think they need to work themselves into this state, like it's another goal to achieve through effort and discipline. They think they need to meditate for hours, do countless affirmations, or visualize until their eyes hurt. And while those practices can be helpful, they miss the fundamental shift that needs to happen first. You can't force your way into this frequency. You can't hustle your way there, because the very act of forcing, the very energy of desperation and striving, creates a signal that pushes away what you want. It's like trying to catch a butterfly by running after it. The more aggressively you chase, the further away it flies. But when you stop, when you become still and present, when you shift into a state of calm certainty, the butterfly lands on your shoulder without any effort from you. This is the journey most people never complete because they're too afraid to let go of control. They're so conditioned to believe that success requires constant action, constant pushing, constant doing, that the idea of becoming still and allowing feels like giving up. But there's a massive difference between giving up and surrendering to a higher state of being. Giving up is resignation. Surrendering is alignment. And when you surrender into this frequency, when you release the death grip on outcomes and trust that reality is responding to your signal, that's when the real magic happens. That's when synchronicities start stacking up so fast you can't even keep track of them all. That's when you realize you've been working against yourself this entire time, broadcasting one frequency with your actions while your unconscious mind was broadcasting something completely different. The transformation happens the moment you recognize this split and decide to align both signals, conscious and unconscious, into one coherent frequency. Because reality doesn't respond to your intentions. It doesn't care about your vision board or your goals list. It responds to your frequency, to the vibrational state you're actually operating from in every moment. And when that frequency is clear, when there's no contradiction between what you want and what you unconsciously believe you deserve, reality has no choice but to deliver exactly what you're broadcasting. Drop a comment saying, "I'm ready for this shift," if you're starting to understand how powerful this really is. Think back to those golden moments in your life when everything just clicked. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Those rare periods where you felt lighter, more aligned with yourself, like you were finally moving in sync with life instead of against it. During those times, you weren't forcing anything. You weren't overthinking every decision or analyzing every possibility. Things just started falling into place naturally, almost effortlessly. And the synchronicities were impossible to ignore. You'd think about someone you hadn't spoken to in months, and within minutes your phone would ring with their name on the screen. You'd need information about something specific, and the exact article, the exact conversation, the exact resource would appear in front of you as if the universe had been listening the entire time. If something clicked while you were listening, if a light went on somewhere inside, go ahead and hit that like button. It helps me know this message is landing where it needs to. These weren't coincidences. They weren't random luck or magical thinking. They were evidence of something very real happening beneath the surface: frequency alignment. In those moments, your conscious desires and your unconscious programming were finally speaking the same language, broadcasting the same signal. There was no internal contradiction, no part of you secretly believing you didn't deserve what you wanted, no hidden doubt sabotaging your efforts behind the scenes. You were whole, you were aligned, and reality, being the perfect mirror that it is, reflected that wholeness right back to you. What's interesting is how you felt during those periods. You weren't stressed, you weren't anxious, you weren't gripping tightly to outcomes or trying to control every variable. You were simply in flow. There's a state of being where you stop resisting what is and start moving with it. And when you're in that state, help materializes before you even form the words to ask for it. Someone offers you exactly what you need without you having to explain yourself. Resources show up from directions you never considered. Solutions present themselves fully formed, requiring minimal effort from you. This is the optimal frequency, the state where reality becomes completely responsive to your needs and desires without any resistance. But here's what most people don't realize about those golden moments. They think it was external circumstances that created that feeling. They think it was because things were going well, so naturally they felt better. They've got it backwards. The feeling came first, the alignment came first, the shift in frequency came first, and then reality responded by rearranging circumstances to match that frequency. This is the hidden truth that changes everything once you grasp it. You don't feel good because good things are happening. Good things happen because you've shifted into a frequency where feeling good, feeling aligned, feeling certain is your natural state of being. The tragedy is that most people experience these flow states accidentally. They stumble into them without knowing what they did to get there, which means they also stumble out of them just as unconsciously. One day they're riding the wave, everything's working, life feels magical. The next week, they're back in struggle mode, forcing and pushing and wondering what happened to that magic. They try to recreate it by repeating the external actions they took during that golden period, but it doesn't work. They can't figure out why the same strategies that produced results before aren't producing them now, and the frustration builds because they're looking in the wrong place. The impact of understanding this one principle cannot be overstated. When you realize that those flow states weren't granted to you by external forces, that you weren't just lucky during those periods, that you actually accessed a specific frequency that anyone can learn to tune into deliberately, everything shifts. You stop waiting for life to go well so you can feel good. You start choosing the frequency first, knowing that reality will inevitably respond to match it. This is the behind-the-scenes mechanism that separates people who have occasional wins from people who live in a constant state of alignment, where opportunities flow naturally and consistently. Right, I remember those moments in the comments. If you've experienced what I'm describing, and you're ready to learn how to access that state whenever you choose. The most frustrating part about those golden moments of alignment is that they never seem to last. You know this feeling intimately. One day you're riding the wave, feeling absolutely unstoppable, like you've finally cracked the code. Everything's flowing. Doors are opening. People are responding to you differently. You're making decisions with clarity and confidence. And then, seemingly out of nowhere, it's gone. You're back in the grind, struggling again, forcing outcomes through sheer willpower, wondering if those magical days were just a fluke. And the worst part, you can't figure out what changed. You're doing the same things, following the same routines, but the frequency has shifted and you don't know how to get it back. This is where most people give up. They conclude that lasting transformation isn't possible for them, that they're just not one of the lucky ones who gets to live in that elevated state permanently. They resign themselves to occasional glimpses of what's possible, brief windows of alignment, but never the sustained experience they're truly craving. And here's what breaks my heart about that resignation. It's completely unnecessary, because there's a hidden mechanism operating behind all of this, precise psychological and energetic principles that determine whether reality responds to you within 24 hours or keeps you waiting indefinitely. And the shocking truth, the revelation that changes everything, is that this isn't something that happens by accident. It's not something you stumble into and stumble out of helplessly. It's something you can activate deliberately once you understand what's actually going on beneath the surface. Most people are operating blind. They're making decisions based on conscious desires while completely unaware of what their unconscious mind is broadcasting. And this creates a split, a contradiction that sabotages everything they're trying to build. Imagine trying to drive somewhere with your GPS telling you to go north while your internal compass is pulling you south. You end up going in circles, exhausting yourself, making no real progress despite all your effort. This is what's happening when your conscious goals and unconscious beliefs aren't aligned. You're sending mixed signals into reality, and reality can't respond coherently to contradiction. It's like static on a radio, too much interference, no clear signal coming through. The journey toward consistent alignment requires you to become aware of this split and then close the gap between what you consciously want and what you unconsciously believe you deserve or can have. Most personal development material focuses exclusively on the conscious side: set goals, visualize, take action. But that's only half the equation. The unconscious mind is infinitely more powerful, and if it's not on board with your conscious plans, you're fighting a losing battle. This is the behind-the-scenes reality that determines whether your efforts produce results or just drain your energy. Now let me show you exactly how this mechanism works, because once you see it clearly, you can't unsee it. And more importantly, you can start working with it instead of against it. Every moment of your existence, whether you realize it or not, you're broadcasting a frequency. This isn't metaphorical or abstract. Your thoughts create chemical reactions in your body. Your emotions generate electromagnetic fields. Your beliefs shape your perception, which determines what information you notice and what you filter out. All of this combines to create a signal that radiates outward, and reality, being far more responsive than most people realize, reads that signal and reflects it back to you in the form of circumstances, opportunities, and encounters. The problem is that most people have no idea what frequency they're actually broadcasting. They think they're transmitting confidence, abundance, and readiness. But underneath, their unconscious patterns are sending out doubt, scarcity, and unworthiness. And because the unconscious operates much more powerfully than the conscious mind, reality responds to the unconscious signal every single time. This is why you can work incredibly hard, have brilliant strategies, do everything right on paper, and still not get the results you want. The underlying frequency doesn't match your conscious efforts. Put "I'm ready to align my frequency" in the comments if this is resonating with you and you're starting to see where the disconnect has been happening in your own life. So let's go back to those moments when everything was working, when you felt like you'd finally figured it out. What was actually happening in those periods that made reality so responsive to you? Here's what you probably didn't notice at the time. You weren't operating from desperation. You weren't gripping tightly to outcomes, white-knuckling your way through every decision, obsessing over how things would unfold. There was this lightness to your entire being, almost like you'd let go of something heavy you'd been carrying for years. And paradoxically, even though you'd surrendered control, you felt more powerful than ever. That contradiction is the key to Everything. Most people think power comes from control, from managing every detail, from forcing outcomes through sheer determination. But real power, the kind that actually moves reality in your direction, comes from the exact opposite place. It comes from releasing the desperate need for things to happen in a specific way. It comes from trusting that when you're broadcasting the right frequency, reality will respond accordingly. And in those golden moments, you accidentally access that frequency without even understanding what you were doing. You stumbled into it. Maybe something good happened that lifted your mood, and suddenly you felt lighter. Maybe you just woke up one day feeling different for no apparent reason. Whatever the trigger was, you shifted into a state where your entire energy changed, and reality immediately began responding to that new signal. That optimal state wasn't random luck. It wasn't the universe randomly deciding to smile on you that week. It was a specific frequency, a precise psychological and energetic configuration that you happened to align with temporarily. And here's why understanding this changes everything. If you stumbled into it once by accident, that means you can recreate it deliberately. Once you know what creates that frequency, once you understand the mechanics behind it, you're no longer dependent on external circumstances to feel good or aligned. You become the one setting the tone, choosing the frequency, and watching reality rearrange itself to match. The transformation that's possible when you grasp this principle goes beyond anything most people imagine. Because right now, if you're like most people, you're waiting for conditions to change before you allow yourself to shift into that optimal frequency. You're waiting for the money to show up before you feel abundant. You're waiting for the relationship to appear before you feel loved. You're waiting for success to manifest before you feel worthy. But that's backwards. The frequency has to come first. The internal state has to shift before the external circumstances can follow. This is the hidden truth behind every manifestation teaching, every success principle, every self-help concept you've ever encountered. They all point to the same fundamental mechanism. Align your frequency first, and reality has no choice but to follow. What makes this so powerful is realizing that those moments of effortless flow weren't gifts granted to you from outside forces. They weren't luck or timing or being in the right place at the right moment. They were evidence of you accessing a state that's always available, a frequency you can tune into any time you choose once you understand how. The only reason it felt temporary is because you didn't know what you'd done to create it, so you couldn't sustain it. You were playing an instrument beautifully, but you didn't know which keys you were pressing. And when the music stopped, you couldn't figure out how to play that same song again. Now imagine what becomes possible when you understand exactly which keys to press, when you can deliberately choose that frequency instead of hoping to stumble into it accidentally. Every decision you make shifts. Your entire relationship with goals and desires transforms. You stop chasing and start attracting. You stop forcing and start allowing. And the impact on your daily experience is immediate and undeniable. Right, this is making sense in the comments if you're starting to see how you've been approaching this from the wrong angle and you're ready to flip the script entirely. Here's what most people completely miss about how this whole system works. Every single moment of your existence, you are broadcasting a signal into reality. And I don't mean that metaphorically or symbolically, I mean it literally. Through your thoughts, your emotions, your beliefs, your internal dialogue, all of it combines to create a frequency that radiates outward from you constantly. This isn't something you turn on and off. You can't stop broadcasting any more than you can stop breathing. The question is never whether you're sending a signal. The question is, what signal are you actually sending? And is it aligned with what you consciously want to experience? Think about your thoughts for a moment. Every time you replay a worry in your mind, every time you rehearse a past failure, every time you imagine things going wrong, You're not just thinking neutral thoughts that disappear into the ether. You're generating specific chemical responses in your body. Your brain releases cortisol. Your nervous system shifts into a state of alert. Your entire physiology changes to match the content of those thoughts. And that physiological state creates an electromagnetic signature, a frequency that extends beyond your physical body. This is measurable, this is real, and reality, being far more responsive than most people understand, picks up on that signal immediately. Because here's the revelation that shifts everything once you truly grasp it. Reality isn't some passive backdrop just sitting there waiting for you to act upon it. Reality is responsive. It's dynamic. It's constantly reading your signal, decoding the frequency you're transmitting, and then reflecting it back to you in the form of circumstances, encounters, and events. This is an interactive relationship, not a one-way street. You're not moving through a fixed world trying to manipulate outcomes. You're in constant dialogue with reality itself, and the language of that dialogue is frequency. When you broadcast doubt, uncertainty, and fear, reality responds by presenting situations that confirm those frequencies. Not because the universe is punishing you or because you're cursed with bad luck, but because reality is simply matching the signal you're sending out. It's like looking in a mirror. The mirror doesn't judge you. It doesn't decide whether to show you a good reflection or a bad one. It simply reflects back exactly what's in front of it. Your frequency is what's in front of the mirror, and your life circumstances are the reflection. This is the hidden mechanism behind why some people seem to live charmed lives, while others struggle endlessly, despite having the same desires, the same goals, sometimes even better strategies. The difference isn't in their actions. It's in the frequency they're broadcasting while taking those actions. Two people can do the exact same thing, attend the same networking event, send the same emails, make the same pitches, but get completely different results. And the reason is that one person is broadcasting confidence, certainty, and expectation of success, while the other is broadcasting hope mixed with doubt, desire tangled up with fear of rejection. Reality doesn't respond to what you're doing. It responds to the frequency you're being while you're doing it. The impact of understanding this principle cannot be overstated, because once you realize that your circumstances aren't happening to you randomly, that they're actually reflecting your internal frequency back to you with perfect accuracy, you stop being a victim of your life and start becoming the conscious creator of it. You stop asking, "Why does this keep happening to me?" and start asking, "What frequency am I broadcasting that's creating this pattern?" That shift in questioning changes your entire relationship with everything you're experiencing. It puts the power back where it belongs, in your hands, in your consciousness, in your ability to choose a different frequency. Drop "I'm choosing my frequency" in the comments if you're ready to take full responsibility for the signal you've been broadcasting and start transmitting something completely different. Now here's where things get really interesting, and this is the part that explains so much of the frustration you've probably been experiencing. Most people have absolutely no idea what frequency they're actually broadcasting. They genuinely believe they're sending out signals of abundance, confidence, and readiness. They're affirming positive things, visualizing their goals, taking inspired action. On the surface, everything looks aligned, but beneath that surface, in the deeper layers of their unconscious mind, something entirely different is being transmitted. Fear is whispering in the background. Doubt is running on autopilot. Unworthiness is embedded in patterns formed years ago. And scarcity, that old familiar scarcity mindset, is still operating like background software you forgot to uninstall. This creates what I call the frequency split, and it's the single biggest reason why intelligent, capable, hard-working people struggle to manifest what they want. Because here's the truth that changes everything once you accept it. The unconscious mind is infinitely more powerful than the conscious mind. Infinitely. Your conscious mind is like the tip of an iceberg. It's what you can see, what you're aware of, what you can actively control. But the unconscious is the massive structure hidden beneath the water, and it's steering the ship whether you realize it or not. So when there's a conflict between what you consciously want and what your unconscious believes, guess which one reality responds to? Every single time, reality receives the unconscious signal, not your conscious intentions. This is the hidden truth behind every delayed manifestation you've experienced. Every time you were so close to getting what you wanted, every near-miss opportunity where things almost worked out but then fell apart at the last second, every situation where you did everything right but still didn't get the result, this split between conscious desire and unconscious programming is what caused it. You were broadcasting two different frequencies simultaneously, and reality couldn't deliver because the instructions were contradictory. It's like trying to order food from a restaurant while simultaneously telling them you're not hungry. They have no idea what to do with that mixed message, so nothing gets delivered. The journey toward consistent alignment requires you to dig deeper than positive thinking and conscious intention. Those things matter, but they're not enough if your unconscious programming hasn't been addressed. Think about it this way. You can consciously decide you want financial abundance, you can set goals. Around money, you can take all the right actions. But if somewhere deep in your unconscious there's a belief that money is hard to come by, or that wealthy people are somehow corrupt, or that you don't deserve more than what you currently have, that unconscious belief will sabotage every conscious effort you make, not because you're broken or cursed, but because your system is designed to maintain coherence between your beliefs and your reality. Your unconscious mind isn't trying to hurt you. It's actually trying to protect you by keeping your external circumstances aligned with your internal programming. If you unconsciously believe that success leads to rejection from your family, your unconscious will find ways to sabotage success to keep you safe and connected. If you unconsciously believe that relationships end in pain, your unconscious will create patterns that either prevent relationships from forming or ensure they end exactly as predicted. This is the behind-the-scenes mechanism that runs your entire life, and most people never discover it because they're too focused on external strategies and conscious-level solutions. The transformation happens when you become willing to examine what's actually broadcasting from your unconscious. When you stop assuming your conscious desires represent your true signal and start investigating the deeper programming that might be contradicting those desires. This requires honesty. It requires looking at patterns in your life and asking uncomfortable questions about what those patterns reveal about your unconscious beliefs. But this work, this willingness to go beneath the surface, is what separates people who make temporary changes from people who experience lasting transformation. Put "I'm ready to look deeper" in the comments if you're willing to examine what your unconscious mind has been broadcasting all this time. So let me paint a picture that makes this crystal clear. Imagine you're sitting at your computer, carefully crafting the perfect email. You're choosing every word intentionally, making sure your message is clear, professional, compelling. You hit send feeling confident that your communication is going to land exactly as intended. But what you don't realize is that while you were typing that beautiful message on your screen, your computer was actually sending corrupted data behind the scenes, broken code, scrambled information, a message that makes no sense to whoever receives it. That's exactly what's happening when your conscious intentions are saying one thing, while your unconscious frequency is broadcasting something completely different. Reality, the recipient of your transmission, can only respond to what's actually being sent. It doesn't matter how clear your conscious intentions are if the signal your unconscious is transmitting contradicts them. Reality isn't reading your vision board. It's not listening to your affirmations. It's receiving the full transmission, conscious and unconscious combined. And when those two signals conflict, the stronger one always wins, and the unconscious is always stronger. This is why you can work so hard, plan so meticulously, do everything the experts tell you to do, and still end up frustrated when results don't materialize. The data being transmitted doesn't match the message you think you're sending. But here's where everything shifts, and this is the moment of true empowerment. The transformation begins the instant you realize you're not a victim of circumstances. You're not at the mercy of bad luck or unfair conditions or a universe that favors other people over you. You're a broadcaster. And just like any broadcaster, once you understand how the equipment works, once you learn to tune the frequency and eliminate the static, you can transmit a clear, coherent signal that reality has no choice but to respond to. This isn't wishful thinking. This is understanding the actual mechanics of how consciousness interacts with external reality. When you learn to consciously tune your frequency, when you do the inner work to align your unconscious patterns with your conscious desires, when you eliminate the contradiction between what you want and what you secretly believe you can have, something remarkable happens. You start transmitting a coherent signal, no more mixed messages, no more split frequencies, just one clear, powerful broadcast that radiates out from every cell of your being. And when that happens, when you achieve that level of alignment, reality responds within that 24-hour window we talked about at the beginning. Not because you've discovered some magical shortcut, but because you've finally removed the interference that was blocking your signal all along. The impact of this realization on your daily life is immediate and profound. Suddenly, you're not blaming external circumstances anymore. You're not wondering why things keep happening to you. You're not feeling powerless in the face of challenges. Instead, you're asking yourself, what frequency am I broadcasting right now? What unconscious beliefs might be contradicting my conscious goals? Where's the split in my signal, and how do I close it? These questions put you back in the driver's seat. They restore your power. They transform you from someone who reacts to life into someone who consciously creates it. This is the journey from victimhood to ownership, from hoping things will change to deliberately changing your frequency and watching reality rearrange itself accordingly. And the beautiful thing is that this isn't reserved for special people or spiritual masters. This is available to anyone willing to become conscious of what they're broadcasting and intentional about bringing their unconscious patterns into alignment with their conscious desires. The mechanics are the same for everyone. The laws governing frequency don't play favorites. They simply respond to whatever signal is being transmitted. Write, "I'm taking back my power" in the comments if you're ready to stop being a victim of circumstances and start being a conscious broadcaster of the frequency you choose. Now, let me tell you something that might surprise you about these principles we've been discussing. These invisible laws governing frequency and reality, they work like gravity. Think about that for a moment. You don't need to believe in gravity for it to function. You don't need to understand the physics behind it, the mathematics, the theories. You could spend your entire life denying that gravity exists, and it would still pull you toward the ground every single time you jump. It doesn't care about your opinion. It doesn't need your permission. It's simply operating all the time, creating effects whether you're aware of them or not. The psychological laws we're exploring here function exactly the same way. They're always on, always listening, always responding to the frequency you're broadcasting. You don't get to opt out of this system. You're already in it, whether you realize it or not. The only question is whether you're operating unconsciously, letting these laws shape your reality by default, or whether you're going to become conscious of them, and start working with them deliberately. This is the difference between someone who drifts through life wondering why things happen the way they do, and someone who actively shapes their experience by understanding the mechanics at play. And here's what makes this so powerful yet so misunderstood by most people. These aren't inspirational concepts. They're not motivational fluff designed to make you feel good temporarily. They're fundamental principles governing how consciousness interacts with reality. They have substance, they have predictable effects, they operate with the same consistency as any natural law. And just like gravity doesn't care whether you're a good person or a bad person, whether you're working hard or hardly working, these laws don't care about your wishes, your hopes, or your good intentions. They respond only to your actual signal, the frequency being broadcast from the depths of your unconscious mind. This is why positive thinking alone doesn't work for most people. They're trying to override these laws with conscious intention, but they're not addressing the unconscious frequency that's actually being transmitted. It's like standing on a scale wishing you weighed less while holding a 20-pound weight in each hand. The scale isn't going to respond to your wish. It's going to respond to what's actually there. Reality operates the same way. It responds to what you're actually broadcasting, not what you wish you were broadcasting or what you tell yourself you're broadcasting. The impact of truly understanding this cannot be overstated, because once you grasp that these are laws, not suggestions, not techniques, not strategies, but actual laws, your entire approach to creating what you want shifts. You stop trying to trick reality or outsmart the system. You stop looking for shortcuts or magical formulas. Instead, you start doing the real work of examining your unconscious patterns, identifying where your frequency is misaligned with your desires, and systematically bringing those two into coherence. This is the behind-the-scenes work that produces actual, lasting transformation rather than temporary shifts that fade after a few days. The journey becomes less about finding the right external strategy and more about cultivating the right internal state, because these laws don't respond to what you do. They respond to what you are, to the frequency you embody, to the signal that radiates from your being when nobody's watching, when you're not trying to impress anyone, when you're just existing in your natural state. That's the signal reality reads. That's the transmission these laws respond to. And when you finally understand this at a deep level, when you truly accept that your internal frequency is creating your external circumstances, you stop looking outside yourself for solutions and start doing the internal work that actually changes everything. Drop "I understand now" in the comments if this is clicking for you and you're starting to see how these laws have been operating in your life all along, whether you were conscious of them or not. So let me show you exactly how this plays out in real life, because once you see this pattern, you'll recognize it everywhere. Picture two people wanting the exact same thing. They're both intelligent, both capable, both putting in similar levels of effort. They're following the same strategies, reading the same books, taking the same courses, doing everything that's supposed to lead to success. Yet one of them succeeds almost immediately, while the other keeps hitting walls, experiencing delay after delay, frustration after frustration. From the outside looking in, it appears unfair. It looks random. It seems like one person got lucky while the other didn't, but behind the scenes, something very specific is happening that has absolutely nothing to do with fairness or luck. The person who succeeds is broadcasting a frequency of certainty. Now, this doesn't mean they know exactly how things are going to unfold. They don't have a detailed roadmap. They can't predict the specific steps or the exact timeline. But somewhere deep inside, in the core of their being, they've already accepted their desire is done. There's a settledness to them, a quiet confidence that isn't loud or arrogant, but is absolutely unshakable. Their unconscious mind isn't conflicted. There's no doubt wrestling with desire. There's no fear cancelling out faith. There's no part of them secretly wondering if they're worthy or capable. They're transmitting a clean signal, one coherent frequency that says, "This is already mine. I'm just waiting for the physical reality to catch up with what I already know to be true." This internal certainty changes everything about how they show up. They take action from a place of inevitability rather than desperation. When they reach out to someone, there's no neediness in their energy. When they pursue an opportunity, there's no grasping or clinging. They're relaxed in their pursuit because the outcome is already settled in their mind. And reality, reading that frequency of certainty, responds by presenting circumstances that match it. Doors open. People say yes. Resources appear, not because they're lucky, but because their frequency is aligned with what they're asking for. The other person, despite their hard work and genuine desire, is broadcasting something entirely different. On the surface, they're doing all the right things. They're taking action, showing up, putting in effort. But underneath, there's a frequency of doubt humming in the background. They want the thing desperately, which creates a signal of lack, of not having it, of needing it to feel complete. They're hoping it works out, which implies uncertainty about whether it will. They're working hard to make it happen, which suggests they don't trust that it could come easily. Every action they take is colored by this underlying frequency of doubt and desperation, and reality responds to that actual signal rather than their conscious intentions. The transformation that needs to happen isn't about working harder or finding better strategies. It's about shifting from hope to certainty, from wanting to knowing, from chasing to receiving. This is an internal shift, a frequency adjustment that happens in the depths of your being. And it's not something you can fake. You can't trick yourself into certainty through repetition of affirmations if your unconscious still holds doubt. You can't pretend your way into alignment if your body is still carrying the tension of not having what you want. The shift has to be real, which means it requires you to examine and release whatever beliefs are creating that doubt frequency in the first place. This is the hidden mechanism behind every success story that looks effortless from the outside. The person isn't working less or getting luckier. They're operating from a different frequency entirely. And once you understand this, once you see that the difference between success and struggle often comes down to the frequency being broadcast rather than the actions being taken, you can stop exhausting yourself with more doing and start focusing on more being, on cultivating that internal state of certainty that makes everything else fall into place naturally. Right, I'm choosing certainty. In the comments if you're ready to stop operating from hope and doubt and start embodying the frequency of someone who already knows their desires are on the way. Now let's look at what's happening with the person who's struggling, because understanding this is crucial to breaking the pattern. They genuinely want what they're pursuing. The desire is real, the effort is real. They're not being lazy or half-hearted about it. But beneath all that conscious effort, there's something else broadcasting. There's doubt whispering in the background. A quiet voice saying, "But what if it doesn't work out?" There's desperation creating a frequency of lack, of not having, of needing this thing to finally feel okay. And even deeper than that, there's often an unconscious belief that good things happen to other people, but probably not to them. Maybe they've been disappointed before. Maybe they watched their parents struggle. Maybe somewhere along the way, they internalize the message that they're not the kind of person who gets what they want easily. These unconscious beliefs aren't just thoughts floating around harmlessly. They're active frequencies being broadcast into reality every single moment. And here's what makes this so challenging. The person is often completely unaware of what they're transmitting. They think they're broadcasting confidence and readiness because that's what they're consciously trying to project. But the unconscious signal is so much stronger. And that's what reality is actually receiving. It's like having a conversation where your words say one thing, but your body language says something completely different. People respond to the body language, to the energy, to what's actually being communicated beneath the words. Reality works the same way. And here's the crucial understanding that changes everything once you truly grasp it. Reality doesn't judge either person. It's not deciding that one deserves success while the other doesn't. It's not playing favorites or being unfair. It simply responds to resonance. When your frequency matches what you're asking for, when there's perfect alignment between your conscious desire and your unconscious beliefs, reality delivers. It has to. It's responding to the law of resonance, which is as reliable as any physical law. But when there's a mismatch, when your conscious mind wants one thing, while your unconscious believes something contradictory, reality can't respond because you're essentially giving two different commands simultaneously. Think of it like this. You're standing at a crossroads, and reality is asking, which direction do you want to go? Your conscious mind is pointing north, saying, that's where I want to go, take me there. But your unconscious mind is pointing south, broadcasting, this is where I actually believe I belong. Reality isn't confused by your mixed signals. It's simply unable to take you in two directions at once. So you end up going nowhere, stuck in the same place despite all your effort, wondering why you can't seem to move forward. The answer isn't that you need to try harder or find a better strategy. The answer is that you need to get both signals pointing in the same direction. This is why transformation isn't primarily about doing different things. It's about being different. It's about identifying and shifting the unconscious frequencies that are contradicting your conscious desires. And this requires deep honesty with yourself. It requires looking at the patterns in your life and asking what they reveal about your unconscious beliefs. If you keep experiencing rejection, what does that tell you about what you unconsciously believe about your worthiness? If money keeps slipping away no matter how hard you work, what does that reveal about your unconscious relationship with abundance? These aren't comfortable questions to ask yourself, but they're the ones that lead to actual breakthrough rather than temporary improvement. The journey toward alignment means bringing those hidden beliefs into the light where you can examine them, question them, and ultimately release them. Because as long as they're operating in the shadows of your unconscious, they're running the show. They're determining what frequency you broadcast. And that frequency is what reality responds to every single time, without exception. Put "I see my contradictions" in the comments if you're willing to be honest about where your conscious desires and unconscious beliefs might not be aligned. Once you truly understand this single principle, that reality responds to resonance, not intention, it completely transforms your relationship with manifestation, success, and life itself. Because suddenly, everything that's happened to you starts making sense in a way it never did before. You can look back at your experiences and see the patterns so clearly. Those moments when things manifested quickly, almost effortlessly. You weren't contradicting yourself. Your conscious desire and unconscious belief were aligned, even if you didn't realize it at the time. And those frustrating delays, those goals that seemed to take forever or never materialized at all, there was a frequency mismatch. Some part of you wanted it, while another part doubted it, feared it, or believed you couldn't have it. Recognizing this pattern in your own experience is like putting on glasses for the first time and realizing you've been walking around with blurry vision your entire life. Suddenly, everything comes into focus. You're not unlucky. You're not cursed. You're not being punished by some external force. You've simply been broadcasting mixed signals without realizing it. And reality has been responding exactly as it should to those mixed signals, with mixed results, delays, and frustration. This understanding shifts you from confusion to clarity, from feeling powerless to recognizing exactly where your power lies and how to use it effectively. But here's where we need to go deeper, because understanding the concept intellectually isn't enough. You need to know how to actually shift your frequency, how to bring those contradictory signals into alignment. And this is where most teachings fall short, because they give you half the equation and leave out the critical piece that makes everything work. Your frequency isn't just about what happens in your head. It's not only about your thoughts or your beliefs or your mental state. Your frequency is composed of two distinct elements that must work together in harmony, and when they don't, you create the exact blockage that keeps reality from responding to you, no matter how hard you try or how much you want something. These two components are meant to function like a perfectly tuned instrument. Think about a guitar. If the strings are in tune with each other, you create beautiful music. But if one string is tuned to a different key than the others, no matter how skilled the musician, the sound will be off. It won't be pleasant. It won't create the effect you're going for. Your frequency works the same way. When both elements are tuned to the same note, broadcasting the same message, reality responds with synchronicity, flow, and manifestation. But when they're out of tune with each other, when they're broadcasting different messages, you get discord, resistance, and delay. The first element is your internal dialogue, everything happening inside your mind. The thoughts you think repeatedly, the beliefs you hold about yourself and the world, the mental movies you replay when you're alone with your thoughts. This is the foundation of your frequency. It's constantly running in the background, shaping your perception, influencing your decisions, coloring every experience you have. Most people are aware of this element to some degree. They understand that their thoughts matter. They know that mindset plays a role in their outcomes. But the second element is what most people completely overlook, and it's equally powerful in determining what frequency you're actually broadcasting. This second element is your language. The words you speak out loud, the way you describe your circumstances to others, the habitual phrases that come out of your mouth automatically without conscious thought. And here's what makes this so critical. Your unconscious mind is listening to every word you say. It's not just passively recording information. It's actively taking your words as instructions, as commands about what reality to create for you. Drop "I'm tuning my instrument" in the comments if you're starting to see how these two elements need to work together and you're ready to bring them into alignment. Let me break this down so you can see exactly how these two elements shape everything you experience. Your thoughts, those inner pictures you replay over and over, the mental movies running on repeat in your mind, the stories you tell yourself in those private moments when nobody's watching. These form half of your broadcast signal. Every time you imagine a scenario, you're not just daydreaming, you're programming. When you replay past failures, when you rehearse worst-case scenarios, when you imagine things not working out, you're creating neural pathways that your unconscious interprets as instructions about what to expect and what to create. These internal narratives become the blueprint your unconscious uses to construct your reality. Most people spend far more time thinking about what they don't want than what they do want. They replay the argument they had, the rejection they experienced, the failure that embarrassed them. They imagine future conversations going wrong, opportunities slipping away, plans falling apart, and they think this is just harmless worry or natural anxiety. But every single one of those thoughts is a seed being planted in the fertile soil of their unconscious mind, and those seeds will grow. They will manifest as circumstances that match the frequency of those dominant thought patterns. But here's where it gets really interesting, and this is the piece that creates the most confusion for people trying to shift their frequency. Even if you manage to control your thoughts, even if you successfully redirect your internal dialogue toward what you want, there's still this second element that can completely undermine all that mental work. Your words, what you say out loud to others, what you whisper to yourself when you think nobody's listening, the casual language you use to describe your current circumstances. These spoken declarations complete your frequency broadcast to reality. And this is where most people unknowingly sabotage themselves. They'll spend time working on their mindset, doing affirmations, visualizing positive outcomes. But then someone asks them a simple question about how things are going, and without even thinking, they respond with language that contradicts everything they've been affirming internally. Oh, things are really tight right now. I'm so stressed about money. Nothing ever works out for me. I can never catch a break. These aren't just innocent observations or casual complaints. These are commands. These are instructions you're giving to the most powerful computer in existence, your unconscious mind. Your unconscious doesn't argue with you. It doesn't evaluate whether what you're saying is helpful or harmful. It simply accepts your words as directives and begins organizing your entire reality around them. When you say, "I'm always struggling with money," your unconscious hears that as, "Create more situations where I struggle with money." When you say, "Relationships never work out for me," your unconscious interprets that as, "Ensure relationships continue to not work out." You're programming your future with every sentence that leaves your mouth, and most people have no idea they're doing this. This is the hidden mechanism behind why some people make incredible progress with their internal work, but still don't see their external circumstances shift. Their thoughts might be aligned, but their language is still rooted in limitation, scarcity, and impossibility. And because both elements need to work together to create a coherent frequency, this contradiction creates static in the signal. Reality receives a mixed message and responds with mixed results. The transformation you're seeking requires both elements to be broadcasting the same frequency simultaneously. Thoughts and words, internal and external, all aligned toward the same outcome. Right, I hear what I'm saying now in the comments. If you're starting to recognize how your own language might be contradicting your internal work and keeping you stuck in patterns you've been trying to break. So here's what's actually happening for most people, and once you see this pattern, you can't unsee it. Their thoughts are pointing in one direction while their words are pointing in another, creating what I call a frequency collision. This collision cancels everything out. It's exactly like trying to drive somewhere with one foot pressing the accelerator and the other foot slamming on the brake at the same time. The engine is revving, you're burning fuel, you're putting in effort, but the car isn't moving. You're stuck in place, creating heat and noise and frustration, but making zero actual progress. And the worst part is that you genuinely can't understand why nothing's working despite how hard you're trying. This frequency collision happens in two main patterns, and I guarantee you're caught in at least one of them right now. The first pattern is actually the more straightforward one, but it's also the most devastating because it creates a reinforcing loop that's incredibly difficult to break. You think about your problems constantly, replaying them in your mind, analyzing them from every angle, worrying about them in those quiet moments before sleep, and then you confirm those problems with your words. You solidify them, you make them more real by speaking them into existence over and over again. Let me show you exactly how this plays out in everyday life. You check your bank account and see a number that makes you uncomfortable. Immediately, your thoughts spiral. How am I going to make this work? Why is money always so hard for me? When will I ever get ahead? And then, later that day, a friend invites you somewhere or asks if you want to split the cost of something, and without even pausing to think, you respond with, "Oh, I can't afford that right now. Things are really tight." In that moment, you've just completed the circuit. You're thinking lack, speaking lack, breathing lack. Your entire being is radiating pure scarcity. And reality, being the perfect mirror that it is, has no choice but to reflect that scarcity right back to you in the form of more situations where money feels tight and opportunities feel out of reach. Or maybe it's relationships. You think about how you're always the one who gets hurt, how people always leave, how you can never find someone who truly values you. And then when someone asks about your love life, you casually say, "Yeah, I'm done with dating. It never works out anyway." You've just programmed your unconscious to ensure that relationships continue to not work out. You've just broadcast a frequency that repels the very thing you actually want. And the impact of this pattern is cumulative. Every time you repeat it, you strengthen the neural pathways, you deepen the groove, you make the pattern more automatic and unconscious. This is the behind-the-scenes reality of why some people seem to be trapped in cycles they can't break. They're not victims of bad luck or unfair circumstances. They're unknowingly reinforcing the exact patterns they claim they want to escape through the consistent alignment of their negative thoughts and negative words. Both elements of their frequency are tuned to the same note, but it's the wrong note. They're creating perfect alignment in the wrong direction, broadcasting scarcity and limitation with such consistency that reality has no choice but to deliver more of the same. The journey toward breaking this pattern starts with catching yourself in the act, with becoming aware of how often your words are confirming and solidifying the very thoughts you should be redirecting. Because here's the hidden truth. You can't think one way and speak another and expect to create transformation. The frequency collision will cancel out any progress you try to make. Both elements must be aligned, but they must be aligned in the direction of what you want to create, not what you're currently experiencing. Drop "I caught myself" in the comments if you're starting to notice how many times a day you think about a problem and then immediately confirm it with your words, creating that reinforcing loop we just talked about. Now, the second pattern is even more insidious, and I see this one constantly with people who are genuinely trying to shift their lives. They're not ignorant about personal development. They've read the books, watched the videos, listened to the podcasts. They understand that mindset matters. They know thoughts create reality. So they start doing the work. They create affirmations. They tell themselves every morning that abundance is their birthright, that money flows easily to them, that success is inevitable. They spend time visualizing, feeling into their desires, building that internal state of certainty, and they genuinely believe they're doing everything right. But then, 2 minutes after finishing their morning affirmation practice, someone asks them to contribute to something. Maybe it's splitting a bill, maybe it's investing in a course, maybe it's just going out to dinner. And without even thinking, without even catching what's about to come out of their mouth, they respond with, "Oh, I can't right now. Things are really tight." Or, "I wish I could, but money's been tough lately." Or maybe next time when I'm in a better place financially. Do you see the contradiction? Their thoughts and their words are pointing in completely opposite directions. They're creating a frequency collision without even realizing it. What makes this pattern so dangerous is that the person thinks they're aligned. They think they're doing the internal work, so they can't understand why their external circumstances aren't shifting. They get frustrated because they're following all the teachings, but nothing's changing. And the reason nothing's changing is because their habitual language, the words that come out automatically when they're not consciously monitoring themselves, is still rooted in limitation and scarcity. This creates what psychology calls a split in the psyche, a fundamental contradiction between what you consciously affirm and what you unconsciously believe and express. And here's the critical understanding that changes everything. When there's a split like this, the unconscious programming always wins. Always. Because that's where your real frequency lives. Your conscious affirmations might sound nice, they might make you feel good temporarily, but your habitual language, those automatic responses that come out without thought, those reveal your true unconscious programming. That's what reality is actually receiving. That's the frequency being broadcast most consistently. And consistency is what matters when it comes to manifestation and creating change. Your unconscious mind is listening to every word you speak. and it's taking those words far more seriously than your morning affirmations. Because your affirmations are deliberate, conscious, controlled, but your habitual language, that's authentic. That's what you actually believe when you're not trying to convince yourself otherwise, and your unconscious knows the difference. It's not fooled by surface-level positive thinking when your deeper programming is still operating from fear and lack. The transformation that's required here goes beyond just adding positive affirmations to your morning routine. It requires you to become conscious of your automatic language patterns and deliberately change them. This means catching yourself before those habitual phrases come out. This means pausing when someone asks you a question that would normally trigger a scarcity response and choosing different words. This means reprogramming at the level where your real beliefs live, not just painting over them with temporary positivity. This is the journey from surface-level change to deep transformation. From doing practices that make you feel like you're evolving while your fundamental frequency remains unchanged, to actually rewiring the unconscious patterns that have been running your life on autopilot. And it starts with honest recognition of where the split exists in your own psyche, where your conscious intentions and unconscious expressions are contradicting each other and cancelling out your progress. Write, "I see my split" in the comments. If you recognize this pattern in yourself and you're ready to do the deeper work of aligning your automatic language with your conscious desires, so let me tell you something that will fundamentally change how you speak from this moment forward. Words aren't just sounds that disappear into the air. They're not casual observations you make about your day. They're not innocent complaints you share with friends to vent your frustrations. Every single sentence that leaves your mouth is a command. It's an instruction you're giving to the most powerful computer in existence, your unconscious mind. And this computer is always listening, always recording, always taking your words as literal programming code for what reality to construct for you. Think about how a computer works. You type in commands, and it executes those commands without questioning whether they're good for you or harmful. It doesn't evaluate whether you really meant what you typed or whether you were just frustrated in that moment. It simply processes the input and produces the corresponding output. Your unconscious mind operates with the same mechanical precision. When you say, "I never have enough money," it doesn't stop to consider whether that's actually true or whether you really want to experience lack. It accepts that statement as a directive and immediately begins organizing your entire reality around that command. This is where the real power lies, and also where the real responsibility comes in. Because your unconscious mind doesn't argue with you. It doesn't question whether what you're saying is true, helpful, or serving your highest good. It doesn't filter out the complaints and only keep the positive statements. It accepts everything, every complaint, every casual observation, every frustrated outburst, every joke you make at your own expense, and treats all of it as instructions for reality creation. This process is automatic and completely unavoidable. You can't turn it off. You can only become conscious of it and use it deliberately instead of accidentally. The impact of this understanding on your daily life is immediate and profound once you truly grasp it. Every time you say, "I'm so tired," you're instructing your body to feel more tired. Every time you say, "I'm terrible with money," you're programming your unconscious to ensure you continue being terrible with money. Every time you say, "Nothing ever works out for me," you're giving explicit instructions to sabotage future opportunities so they continue to not work out. These aren't dramatic exaggerations. This is literally how the system works. Your words create your reality, not through some mystical magic, but through the very tangible mechanism of unconscious programming. Most people go through their entire lives completely unaware of this process. They speak carelessly, complaining about everything they don't like, describing their problems in vivid detail, reinforcing their limitations with every conversation. And then they wonder why those problems persist, why those limitations never seem to budge, why their circumstances feel so stuck despite their desire for change. The answer is right there in the language they've been using all along. They've been giving their unconscious mind explicit instructions to maintain exactly what they claim they want to escape. The transformation begins the moment you become conscious of this mechanism and start choosing your words with the same care you'd use when programming a computer that controls your entire life, because that's exactly what you're doing. This doesn't mean you have to be perfect or never speak about challenges. It means becoming aware of the difference between acknowledging a current circumstance neutrally and reinforcing it through repeated declaration. It means catching yourself before those habitual complaints come out and choosing language that programs the reality you actually want to experience instead of the one you're currently stuck in. This is the hidden mechanism behind lasting transformation. Not just thinking differently, not just visualizing better outcomes, but fundamentally changing the commands you're giving your unconscious mind through the words you speak every single day. Because those words are creating your tomorrow, whether you realize it or not. Put "my words are my power" in the comments if you're starting to feel the weight of responsibility that comes with understanding how your language is literally programming your future reality. Now let me show you exactly how this programming works in real time, because understanding the timeline changes everything. When you say, "I never catch a break," or "nothing ever works out for me," you might think you're just venting, just releasing frustration, just being honest about how you feel in that moment. But what's actually happening is far more consequential. You're planting those exact scenarios into the soil of your future. You're taking seeds of limitation and lack and carefully placing them where they can grow into your tomorrow. And the thing about seeds is that you don't see the sprout immediately. There's no instant feedback that shows you the damage being done, which is precisely why most people continue this pattern for years without ever connecting their language to their circumstances. But beneath the surface, invisible to your conscious awareness, those seeds are taking root. They're spreading through your unconscious programming like roots spreading through soil. They're establishing neural pathways that make those limiting beliefs more automatic, more reflexive, more deeply embedded in how you perceive and interact with reality. Every time you repeat a limiting phrase, you water those seeds. You give them more energy, you strengthen the pattern, and eventually, inevitably, they break through the surface of your experience as actual circumstances that match exactly what you've been declaring. Your words are literally programming your future conditions. This isn't metaphorical. This isn't spiritual bypassing or positive thinking propaganda. This is the actual mechanism through which your current language creates your future reality. If you've been speaking limitation, if your habitual phrases revolve around scarcity, if your automatic responses emphasize impossibility, then don't be surprised when those are the exact realities that manifest within the next 24 hours and the days that follow. The language you use today is creating tomorrow's circumstances with mathematical precision. Think about the last week of your life and pay attention to the phrases you've used most frequently. What have you been declaring about money, about relationships, about your health, about your capabilities? Those declarations aren't disappearing into nothing. They're programming your unconscious, which is then orchestrating your reality to match those declarations. This is the behind-the-scenes mechanism that most people never discover because they're too busy looking outside themselves for solutions, for strategies, for opportunities, when the real work needs to happen in their language, in their declarations, in the commands they're giving their unconscious mind every single day. The journey toward deliberate reality creation requires you to take full responsibility for every word that leaves your mouth. This doesn't mean you have to be perfect or never acknowledge challenges. It means becoming conscious of the difference between neutral observation and limiting declaration. Between saying, "My bank account is currently at this number," versus "I'm always broke." Between "that didn't work out" versus "nothing ever works out for me." The first statement in each pair is a neutral fact. The second is a command to your unconscious to ensure the pattern continues indefinitely. This level of consciousness around language feels uncomfortable at first because it requires constant vigilance. You have to catch yourself mid-sentence. You have to pause before responding to questions. You have to become aware of phrases you've been using your entire life without thinking twice about them. But this discomfort is the price of transformation. This heightened awareness is what separates people who talk about changing their lives from people who actually do it. Because real change doesn't happen through occasional affirmations or weekend workshops. It happens through the consistent daily practice of choosing language that programs the reality you want instead of reinforcing the reality you're trying to escape. Drop "I'm choosing my words carefully now" in the comments if you're feeling the shift that happens when you realize every word you speak is either building the future you want or cementing the one you're trying to leave behind. Now here's where everything we've been discussing comes together in a way that accelerates the entire process. And this might be the most counterintuitive piece of all. Most people think gratitude is something you express after you receive what you want. You get the money, then you say thank you. The relationship shows up, then you feel grateful. The opportunity manifests, then you acknowledge it with appreciation. But this approach has it completely backwards, and understanding why changes everything about how quickly reality responds to you. Gratitude isn't the response to receiving. Gratitude is the signal that you've already received it on the level that matters most. When you express genuine gratitude before there's any physical evidence of what you desire, you're not being delusional or practicing toxic positivity. You're doing something far more sophisticated. You're tuning your frequency to reception. You're shifting from the energy of wanting, which broadcasts lack, to the energy of having, which broadcasts abundance. And that shift in frequency is what collapses the time between desire and manifestation. Think about it this way. When you want something desperately, when you're hoping and wishing and waiting for it to arrive, what frequency are you broadcasting? You're broadcasting, "I don't have this, I need this, I'm incomplete without this." That's a frequency of lack, of emptiness, of something missing. And reality, being the perfect mirror that it is, reflects that lack right back to you by keeping you in a state of waiting and wanting. But when you say, "Thank you, it's already mine," before there's any evidence, something profound happens in your nervous system and your unconscious programming. You're telling your unconscious mind and reality itself that you trust the process completely, that you're not anxious about when or how it will appear because you already know it's done, that you're aligned with receiving because you've already accepted it as yours on the level that precedes physical manifestation. This creates a frequency of certainty, of completion, of already having. And when you broadcast that frequency consistently, reality has no choice but to arrange circumstances that match it. You're no longer operating from a state of desperate need or hopeful wishing. You're operating from a state of grateful recognition that what you desire is already in motion toward you. The transformation this creates in your daily experience is remarkable. When you wake up and express gratitude for the abundance that's on its way, for the opportunities that are lining up, for the relationships that are forming, you're not lying to yourself. You're choosing a frequency. You're making a deliberate decision about what signal to broadcast. And throughout the day, when challenges arise or when circumstances seem to contradict what you're claiming, you maintain that frequency of gratitude anyway, not as denial of what is, but as an acknowledgement of what's becoming. This is the practice that separates people who manifest occasionally from people who manifest consistently. Because gratitude before receiving isn't just a nice spiritual concept. It's a frequency adjustment that tells your unconscious you're ready, that you're open, that you're already operating as the version of yourself who has what you desire, and your unconscious, receiving that signal clearly and consistently, begins reorganizing your reality to match it. Your perception shifts. You notice opportunities you would have missed before. You take actions you wouldn't have considered. You show up differently in conversations and interactions. All because the underlying frequency has shifted from wanting to having, from hoping to knowing, from someday to already done. This is the final piece of the puzzle, the element that accelerates everything we've discussed. When your thoughts are aligned, when your words are programmed correctly, and when you add this layer of genuine gratitude for what hasn't yet manifested physically, you create a frequency so powerful, so coherent, so clear that reality responds within that 24-hour window we talked about at the beginning. Right, thank you. It's already mine. In the comments if you're ready to shift from waiting for your desires to claiming them as already done and watching reality catch up to your new frequency. So, what actually happens when you maintain that signal of trust, that vibration of certainty we've been discussing? This is where the mechanics get really interesting because you're essentially hacking the timeline. That certainty, that unwavering knowing that what you desire is already yours, is what collapses the time between desire and delivery. You're no longer operating from a state of waiting, where every day feels like you're watching the clock, wondering when it's going to happen. You're no longer operating from lacking, constantly aware of the absence of what you want. And you're definitely not operating from hoping, that anxious energy of maybe it'll work out, maybe it won't. Instead, you're broadcasting the frequency of already having. You're embodying the version of yourself who already possesses what you desire, who already lives that reality, who already experiences those circumstances. And when you can hold that frequency consistently, not just during your morning practice, but throughout your day, in your conversations, in your responses to challenges, in those quiet moments when nobody's watching, reality, being the perfect mirror that it is, has no choice but to reflect that frequency back to you in the form of actual physical manifestation. This is why some people experience rapid shifts, while others struggle for years with the same desires. It's not about who wants it more, or who deserves it more, or who's working harder. It's about who can maintain the frequency of already having while the physical reality is still catching up. Most people break. They hold the frequency for a day, maybe a week if they're disciplined, but then doubt creeps in. Impatience shows up. The gap between their current circumstances and their desire becomes too uncomfortable, and they slip back into the frequency of wanting and lacking. And the moment they do that, they reset the timeline. They push the manifestation further away because they've shifted back to broadcasting lack. But here's what you need to understand about maintaining this frequency, and this is the piece that most people completely overlook even after they grasp everything we've discussed. Knowing how frequency works intellectually isn't enough. Understanding that your thoughts and words create your reality isn't sufficient. Even practicing gratitude before receiving, while powerful, is still just one technique. What's missing for most people are the specific methods for aligning the conscious and unconscious mind so deeply that the frequency becomes automatic, effortless, sustainable beyond just that initial 24-hour window. This missing piece is what separates temporary shifts from lasting transformation. Because anyone can get excited about these concepts and hold a high frequency for a day or two. That initial burst of understanding, that moment of clarity when everything clicks, that's easy. What's difficult is maintaining it when life throws challenges at you, when circumstances seem to contradict what you're claiming, when weeks pass without visible evidence of change. This is where most people fail, not because the principles don't work, but because they haven't learned the deeper techniques for embedding this frequency so deeply into their unconscious that it runs automatically, even when their conscious mind is distracted or discouraged. The journey towards sustainable transformation requires more than understanding concepts. It requires actual practices that rewire your unconscious programming at the root level, that create new default patterns, that make operating from certainty more natural than operating from doubt. This is the behind-the-scenes work that nobody talks about because it's not as flashy as manifest in 24 hours. But it's what makes the difference between people who have occasional wins and people who completely transform their baseline reality and maintain that transformation long-term. And the impact of this deeper work cannot be overstated, because when you align your conscious and unconscious mind at this fundamental level, you're not just manifesting individual desires anymore. You're operating from an entirely different frequency as your new normal. Opportunities don't just show up occasionally, they flow consistently. Synchronicities don't just happen once in a while, they become your everyday experience. You're not riding temporary highs followed by crashes back to struggle. You're established in a new baseline that itself keeps rising. Put "I'm ready for lasting change" in the comments if you're starting to see that real transformation requires going deeper than surface-level techniques, and you're willing to do that deeper work. If you made it all the way here, I already know something important about you. You're not someone who settles for surface-level answers or quick fixes that fade by tomorrow. You're genuinely ready for this shift. And that alone tells me you're already operating at a different frequency than most people will ever access. The fact that you invested this time to understand how reality actually responds means you're tuning into something real, something that works when you apply it with intention and consistency. If something clicked while you were watching, if a light went on, somewhere inside, and you recognized yourself in these patterns, go ahead and hit that like button. It helps me know this message is landing where it needs to. And honestly, it helps more people find content like this when they're searching for real answers instead of empty promises. That connection we built over the last few minutes, that matters, and your like tells me it resonated. And listen, if you haven't subscribed yet, this is the moment. I create content specifically for people who want to understand the actual mechanics behind how consciousness shapes reality. Not fluff, not fantasy, but the principles that produce results when you work with them intentionally. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss what's coming next. Because we're going deeper into these frequencies and exploring the techniques that make this transformation sustainable beyond just 24 hours. Leave me a comment right now saying, "This message was meant for me," because I read every single one, and I want to know this reached you at exactly the right time. There's a video right here that takes everything we just covered and shows you the practical application, how to actually implement these frequency shifts in your daily life starting today. Click on it and continue this journey with me over there. I'll see you in the next one.